This is Mike Lingle from Rocket Pro Forma, and today we're going to run through some valuation shortcuts when you're raising money for your company. And I just want to say, first of all, you get what you negotiate. I mean, we see that all the time. People negotiate some amazing deals for themselves, so don't be afraid to ask for what you want. And then two, just make sure you're balancing the deal terms versus your time. Fundraising is a rabbit hole of time, and you want to get the deal done and you want to get good terms, but don't necessarily nickel and dime every last dollar, because you can actually create more value for yourself by running your company. You know, at some point, you just got to take the money and get down to building the business. Okay, so when we go to sell equity, we need to know the value of the company. And we're selling X% of the company for X amount of money. Sometimes we don't know the value of the company, especially in early stage. So there are some options, including using a convertible note or a safe to raise the money, which is basically a way of not valuing the company right now. What we do is we say in the future, in the next round, that then we'll value the company and we'll retroactively reward our early investors based on that future valuation. When we start doing that, if we read the fine print, we'll actually start seeing conversations about a value cap. I'm not going to go into a whole description of convertible notes and safes here, but the value cap, the valuation cap, is a way to protect early investors. You know, if you really hit the ball out of the park using their money, they want to participate. They want some upside. So when you start talking about valuation caps, you're kind of back into the valuation game. And what I'm going to show you today is a way to value your company, whether you're doing equity or a convertible note or a safe, on the back of a napkin very quickly. And this is the exact strategy that my company used when we raised money. So we asked the question, how much is my startup worth? And the answer is, who cares right now? Let's figure out a shortcut. And so just to review, the pre-money valuation is how much my startup is worth now, before I raise money. The post-money valuation is that pre-money valuation plus the cash that I have raised. So keep these formulas in mind. The post-money valuation, the formula we're going to use here is the cash raised divided by the percent ownership that the investor will have after the transaction. And so this is actually something that we know, right? We know the cash raised and we know the percent ownership. So let's say we're raising $2 million and our investors want to own a third of the company. We know these two things, right? A third of the company is about 33.3%. So the post-money valuation is going to be the $2 million that we're raising divided by the 33.3% that the investors want to own. So that gives us a post-money valuation of $6 million. So what's the pre-money valuation? So the pre-money valuation is the post-money valuation, $6 million, minus the $2 million that we're raising. So again, we're raising $2 million and our investors want a third. So the pre-money valuation is equal to $2 million divided by 33.3%, which we decided is $6 million, minus the $2 million we're raising, gives us a $4 million pre-money valuation. So that's the deal that our investors offered us. They said, great, we'll give you the $2 million. We want to own a third of the company. We'll offer you the $2 million in cash on a $4 million pre-money valuation. And we went away and thought about that and said, you know, it's actually pretty good. But what if we go back and offer them a $5 million pre-money valuation? So in this case, the post-money valuation, remember, is going to be the $5 million pre-money that was our counteroffer plus the $2 million in cash. So now the post-money valuation is going to be $7 million instead of $6 million. And so what percentage will our investors own at the end of the transaction? Think about that for a minute. Got it? You can even use a calculator. Great. So the post-money investor ownership is going to be 2/7. So they're $2 million in cash, worth of the $7 million post-money valuation. Remember, investor percentages are based on the post-money valuation. So they're going to own 2/7 of the company, which is around 28.6%. So we went back to them with that deal. They said, yes, we did the deal. Right? And it wasn't that much negotiation. We didn't do any discounted cash flows. We didn't try to figure out the value of our company based on anything other than we wanted $2 million. Our investors wanted to own a third of the company. And we kind of cut that deal, right? So valuation shortcut number 2 are these two formulas. Post-money valuation is equal to the cash raised divided by the percent ownership, and the pre-money valuation is the same formula, you just subtract out the cash raised. Remember, valuation shortcut number 1 was the convertible note or the safe in order to avoid the valuation, delay the valuation conversation. This valuation shortcut number 2 gives you a back-of-the-napkin valuation very, very quickly. So keep it in mind and use this. And once you have your back-of-the-napkin valuation, remember that investors have a really good sense of the landscape. You're doing one deal, investors are looking at 100 deals a month. They have a much better sense of what companies are worth and how deals are priced, especially investors because they focus on particular industries, on particular types of startups, on particular stages of startups. They will have a much better sense of the landscape than you. And so the question is, think of it like a realtor. Like if I'm listing my house, I get a realtor, A, because they can help me with all the details of the transaction, but B, because they have a sense of the pricing. So they can help me figure out the right price to list my house at. Who else has a good sense of valuations, right? So think about that for a second. The answer is startup lawyers. And what you can do, I recommend getting a good startup lawyer. They can help you sanity check the valuation that you're asking for your company because they also see a ton of deals. And make sure to use a real startup lawyer. Don't try to use your family lawyer, use an actual startup lawyer. A, they'll do a better job negotiating the deal and understanding the terms. But B, they also have a better sense of the landscape. And if you don't have a startup lawyer, go interview some startup lawyers. And during the interview process, run your pricing by them and see what they say. Valuation shortcut number 4 is road test with people who aren't going to invest in you anyway. This is why pitch competitions are great. Also, join accelerators, find, investors who aren't in your space, run your pitch past everyone, see which questions they ask, see which they push back on, and work your way up to your dream investors. Don't start with your dream investor because you'll need to road test both your valuation and your pitch. So start with people who aren't going to invest with you and then work your way up to your dream investors as you improve your pitch and your confidence. Valuation shortcut number 5, remember that you get what you negotiate. And this is what I said at the beginning, but time is usually more important than a few extra dollars. So get a good deal, but don't worry about getting the best deal. Get the money, and then you can work on growing the business, which will actually create more value. And then another piece of advice, ABH is always be hustling. Investors love entrepreneurs who are always pushing forward. Investors love momentum, right? So if you can always be pushing the ball down the field, you're going to stand out. Remember, investors are looking at 100 deals a month. And so all the deals start to look the same. What's different, what differentiates a good deal from a bad one is the entrepreneur, how much hustle they have. So make sure you're the entrepreneur that's always hustling. And also remember that you get your best deals when you don't need the money. It's an unfortunate fact. But if you're doing really well, maybe that's the time to raise rather than when you actually need the money. Also, just be aware of the valuation, right? And so what happens is you need to keep your eye on the exit. And what I mean by that, if we look in the last year, we've seen 2 pretty big destructions of value. So both WeWork and Magic Leap. And what happened was they raised money at a very high valuation. And then all of a sudden, it turned out the companies weren't worth that high valuation. But no one could buy them. There was no exit available to them. The only exit they had left themselves was an IPO, and the IPO fell apart. In WeWork's case, they were about to IPO, but it fell apart. In Magic Leap's case, there was never going to be an IPO because they never figured out a product. But in both cases, they couldn't exit because they'd set the valuation too high. So if you raise $5 million on a $15 million pre-money valuation, and your investor wants a 10x return, what do you need to exit for, right? This is kind of a trick question. You can pull out the calculator if you want. Do you have your answer? So remember, we're looking at the post-money valuation. So the post-money valuation is $20 million. It's the $5 million in cash we raised plus the $15 million pre-money valuation gives us $20 million post-money. So if we want to 10x that, we need to sell for $200 million. Most startups sell for between 25 and 150 million. So already in just this one round, we may have priced ourselves beyond the high end of common acquisitions. And that may not be what we want to do, right? So just keep your eye on the exit and don't overvalue yourself, because that may keep you from being able to exit the way you want. So think of questions, bring them to our session.